I'm Hank Stoltz, and thank you for joining us on Central Mass Chronicles, where we take a local look, a Central Mass-centric look at the issues of the day, whether they be national, state, or local. For those of you who are a long-time Central Mass Chronicles viewers, you'll be very happy to see Roberta Schaefer back here to my right, and you will also be very happy to see longtime panelist Barbara Haller here as well, former district councilor, and Brad Wyatt, who has been with us these last few weeks, who is a local businessman and has been weighing in on the topics. Barbara, let me begin with you if I can, because this school is actually in the district that you used to represent for the city. Claremont School, Claremont Academy, and there has been talk of a resource officer. What really has struck me about this story is that the objection seems to not just be about should we have resource officers, and we can debate if there should be resource officers in schools or not and what they mean. That seems to me that the present district councilor, Sarai Rivera, really took offense to the way that her neighborhood was portrayed and the area around Claremont Academy was portrayed in the article, and that it was going on stereotypes.
She may have been somewhat offended by the portrayal of the neighborhood, but what I saw larger in her comments, as well as others, is that it was I'm going to use the word misuse of the resource officer role.
He was not just going to be in the school.
In fact, presenting it as if it was going to be outside the school, that it was really regular police duty and responsibility that was going to be. So, and then digging down a little bit, apparently the school system has gotten a lot of resources for security over the last couple of years, and they're looking for a way to spend it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
Well, but it's interesting too, to that point, that it has been brought up. Would it be better off to make sure that you fund the soccer team? Where are the cameras?
And there's a very active advisory committee that has been asking for additional resources at the time that the kids get released from school to help with the crosswalks, to help with the street traffic, to help with getting kids to their next location. So it hasn't been that there hasn't been a request for additional police support for that school, and then for it to kind of pop up out of seemingly nowhere, saying, well, yeah, the neighborhood needs, it's dangerous,
If they're walking it back at all, Roberta, it does seem to be as if it's going to end up being portrayed as this offhand comment by the superintendent. I don't know how you have an offhand comment about a resource officer for a school, but to Barbara's point, the things that seem to be happening are outside of the school.
Well, it would be interesting to know, first of all, to look at what's the crime in the neighborhood, to what extent that is driving this. But all the other high schools do have a resource officer, so that it didn't strike me as being.
Well, not all, but yeah, a lot of them do. I don't think Goddard has one. I think that's shared. I think
maybe, but the others do. I think I read it in the story that the other. So it didn't strike me as strange that you would want to have one there. I'm wondering whether having the resource officer in the school may serve as a deterrent for certain behaviors that could arise if you don't have somebody there. So, for example, as you know, I think this is part of the larger issue of schools being under duress to make sure that the suspension rates are not disproportionate toward minority students. And I'm wondering whether this is a way that the school department is thinking.
It was never brought. That was never.
I know. I'm just speculating. I'm just speculating, which may not be fair. But I'm trying to put these pieces together. That maybe it has worked as something of a deterrent in the other schools.
I think it had to have been Brad, I would go out on a limb and say that I think, Barbara, it was probably a surprise to the superintendent that when she brought up, put a school resource officer, to your point, if other schools have them, that there was all of a sudden there was a lot of pushback on the fact that there would be a resource officer and that it was somehow saying something about Claremont Academy.
Well, was it a pushback just from Sarai, or was there a pushback from the neighborhood?
Well, I think, Sarai says
What
that
do
it's the
parents
neighborhood, and you've already had Dante Comparetto on the school committee say that he is going to bring it forward and that he is going to oppose having it as well. Brad, what do you think?
I used to be on the school board in Boylston, and I always thought it was good when there were more resources applied to a school. And I'm not there every day, so I wouldn't know exactly how this resource officer works, but I just sort of assume he creates bonds, he gives people a sense of security, he makes friends with the students, and who knows, maybe he even inspires some of those students to go out and serve in the future as a police officer. So I don't see what the big controversy is.
The controversy is the way it was presented.
Yeah, I think the way that it came out, but I think that there is that larger issue. Is this part of, I think this is separate unto itself in Claremont Academy. Is this just, Barbara, that the issue of should we have school resource officers and a school resource officer good? The unthinkable could happen, but he will create bonds, and then there are those on the other side who goes, this jackbooted thug, this authoritarian figure, walking the halls. But this seems different, though. I mean, there seems to be some more nuance to this.
Yeah, and I just think the information I have is that this is regular police work that we're talking about. It's regular police work that the community and the school have asked for and not been able to get for many years. And now they're using a resource officer that is supposed to be what Brad just described as an officer that's going to be out into the neighborhood. So I don't get it. It's a disconnect. And I think there's also concern over the resource officer, the philosophy around, are they a good thing? Do we need them? Are they helpful?
Well, how about this larger issue, though, that just somehow saying that Claremont Academy needs a resource officer means there must be violence happening in the school, or why, and there isn't. We've worked hard with Steve Sargent, the police chief, to lower these, and that somehow all of us, whether we know anything, and I freely admit I don't know anything about Claremont Academy, that I'm going to have a bad impression of Claremont Academy because they're getting a resource officer.
Not if you have it at the other high schools. And we know that a few years ago we did have incidents. And interestingly enough, of course, if you remember at North High, the incidents were outside the school, right outside the school at the time of dismissal. So clearly there is a need for that, right at the times that kids are, moving in and out of the building. And again, if they're doing it full time, I think that there must be, some need.
Yeah, I think it was a really lousy rollout, and it's very difficult to tell whether it's a good idea or a bad idea as far as I'm concerned. But I also know that the principal, Angela Plant, is new. She was just recently brought on and had no, as my understanding, experience as a principal. She was a temporary assignment. And so it may just be a series of missteps. And then people were caught off guard and said things
that part's interesting too. And Brad, back to your experience on a school committee. So when does the superintendent, whether it ended up being that it was from an offhand comment to the paper and geez, I never expected there to be any blowback, when does the superintendent have to say, you know what, I said it, I'm going to dig in my heels and this is going to happen, and by golly, we'll end up with a resource officer at Claremont Academy?
Well, at the end of the day, everybody has to work together. Nobody does the entire schooling by one person. So the superintendent works with the principals, works with the teachers, and it's a cohesive group that all communicate back and forth. So I think it'd be hard to dig your heels in.
Well,
on
I think this
anything.
has to be council approved. I think this is a city council issue.
Because does the council pay for this? Is it on the city side? Is it the police department?
I can't answer
or
that.
is
I
it the
should know the
schools?
answer to that,
Yeah,
and I apologize.
that would
But
be-
I thought the city
Who's
council had to
done?
weigh in on this.
I don't think it's ever good when the mayor, the head of the school committee, the members of the school committee, and the members of the city council go, yeah, I don't know, we read, all we know is what we read
Correct.
Yeah, well,
in the paper.
that's not
That's
good.
never the
Right.
way
That's
to
never
handle it.
Lack of
Hey,
communication
coming
on
up,
their part.
let's talk about the fact that we do have a robust election cycle this time around. We have many more people who are running for school committee and who are running for city council. We'll talk about that straight ahead on Central Mass Chronicles.
You can't get Worcester weather from a Boston TV station. The sun could be shining in downtown Boston, but the weather could be very different here in Worcester. People tell me all the time how much they count on our weather forecast, and we know how important that is to our Worcester News Tonight viewers. Each weekday, we'll give you your weather, your 10-day forecast for right here in Worcester, only on Worcester News Tonight.
Worcester's only local forecast, weeknights on Worcester News Tonight. Hi, I'm Dale LePage.
And I'm Jennifer Ankowiak from Charter TV3's entertainment show WooTube.
On every episode of WooTube, we bring you local music and comedy videos.
Our monthly interview segment with music and comedy venue owners and the best upcoming events in your area.
It's Central New England's music and comedy videos. Plenty of events you'll want to attend and so many places you'll want to be. WooTube.
Local news from Central Massachusetts for Central Massachusetts.
A car into a utility pole on Webster Street in Worcester this evening.
Worcester reaches a new host agreement with its 14th recreational marijuana business.
A fire breaks out in Groton today. A rollover crash in Worcester slows down traffic on Route 20 this afternoon.
Reporters in the field. And an in-depth local forecast. Worcester News Tonight on Charter TV3.
Well, everybody's always talking about apathy among voters and the fact that we don't get enough people to run even for city council or school committee. Not so this time around. And Roberta, I'm very interested in the fact that maybe the conventional wisdom that, oh, if everything is going along okay, not as many people are going to show up to vote or not as many people are going to run. Everybody seems to be happy with the direction of the city. So that seems to have led to people going, I want to come out and I want to run. Why do we have such a big class this time for both school committee and city council?
Okay, well, on the school committee side, I think there are some major issues that people are latching onto, sort of beneath the surface. And this one that has now been floating around for the last almost whole academic year is the sex ed curriculum. And it hasn't been decided. So I don't know whether they intend to decide it before the election or whether this is going to be an election issue.
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely an election issue because I think that I think the last thing that the mayor said, who is also the head of the school committee, right, it's going to be, and that means that it's going to go at least until September and into the school year. And you know what else I don't understand, Roberta, is it seems as if we do have just two choices. And one choice,
no, we don't. That's
but
the
that
point.
seems to be the way in which it is being presented. I have one choice that people will tell me is in your face, and it's the hide the condom game. And then I have this other choice that people will say completely milquetoast, the Michigan model,
right,
and it won't solve anything. You're better off with having nothing.
No, as I said in the column that I came out in yesterday's Telegram, the Michigan model is a comprehensive model, but it puts the sex ed in the context of a much broader health education curriculum having to do with, the body, sports, et cetera, nutrition, and so on. So it's not just, it's in a context, whereas the Proud Choices model, which was prepared and is funded by Planned Parenthood, is primarily this model that deals, strictly with the preparing students for their sexual relations. And the interesting thing about the Proud Choices model is that you cannot get the whole thing online. You cannot see what the entire curriculum is, which I find they're obviously hiding something.
I do find that very interesting.
Yeah,
people have kind of pulled that hide the condom game out, and I said, well, okay, must, and I said, come on, that must be something that you pull out if you're against it. But I also was struck, there's really only sort of the one module that you're able to see. And,
yes.
And Brad, so the Proud Choices, the Michigan model, but there are a lot of candidates running. I do think there is an issue that they are running on in school.
I think Roberta's right on the right track. You got to know, you got to have the information to make a decision. And if you can't go online and read about it and study,
right,
and actually maybe even have not just in the voting booth, but with your kids, have your own discussion, then you're sort of at a loss. So I really would like to see it online and then make a decision rather than just.
So school committee, an issue that is driving it.
Beyond that, I just want to mention one other before Barbara jumps in, and I mentioned this in the last segment. This whole issue of in-school suspensions versus out-school suspensions, and the pressure to reduce the number of minority suspensions because they seem to be disproportionate and so on. This is a nationwide issue now because this is an order that came down from the Department of Education under the Obama administration. And what has happened, I think, is that, and this relates to the resource officers also, trying to figure out how to do this, because I do believe that there have been lots of disruptions in the classroom as a result of not being able to suspend the kids who have behaved inappropriately, and you're penalizing all the kids who do come to school to learn. So teachers, I think, the ones I've spoken to, are frustrated with the limitations on what they have. And I think at some point, not just in Worcester, but this is going to explode nationwide, because teachers are really being under pressure.
I'm not sure we're still even talking about how many people are in the
Yeah,
council
well,
race,
I
but
just
go,
want to know
but
what
yeah,
I
but
do-
you
what
comment
I
on
do
comment on whatever you
I agree
wish.
with you.
Yeah.
The conventional wisdom is that when things are going well, people aren't interested in running. And we're seeing kind of just the opposite of that. And why is that? And I think that there's change in the air. I think it's, aside from these issues, which are real and will definitely influence people's vote, there is a sense in the air that people have energized themselves to want to run for public office. And I think they want to be part of the renaissance on some end, but I think they also see an opportunity, because there is polarization happening at least on the school committee side. It's consensus is very difficult to get on the school committee this time, that it's being seen by as an opportunity to bring new voices to the table. And this is not something that's happening in a vacuum. This is part of, I mean, when I was involved in this kind of stuff, it was understood that you had to figure out what was important to you, what your agenda was going to be. And then you had to wait for that window to open so that you could go through and move that agenda forward. But you had to be prepared for it, right? You couldn't wait for the window and say, oh, we have some money out here, how are we going to spend it? You had to know what you were rallying for. And I think that there has been a concerted effort on both sides of the polar circle, the left progressive and the right, that see this as an opportunity to take advantage of the interest in Worcester, to get new voters out there. If you go with the old voters, we can kind of predict what's going to happen. They're going to have to bring, these candidates are going to have to bring a new voting group in to win. And they want to be part of this excitement. And I think it has something to do with the Me Too movement. I think it has something to do with the police issue. And the public conversations that's going on. I think it has something to do with the Trump administration and the pushback on all that.
Because, of course, it's supposed to be nonpartisan. Do you think now that we will see more issues? So Roberta starts right off with school committee. I think there's an issue that's driving it. You ran in the district where I think there were usually more issues. But overall, I think city councilors are usually, I'm a nice fella or I'm a nice gal and I want to be one of six and right. Vote for me, and they hate issues. Are we going to see issues this time
Well, I
around?
think the issue that seems to be emerging, which is one that I'm pleased, is neighborhood versus downtown. Because we had, for many years, it was very neighborhood focused, and then it became very downtown. Downtown's the answer, the downtown renaissance. Now we're concerned about gentrification, affordable housing, and neighborhood condition, trash. So I think those issues are going to come forward. And you're right, as a counselor, you don't want issues, right? Because you make enemies.
Well, on the council side, I haven't heard anybody on the city council talking about the proposal that Governor Baker has come forward with, in terms of easing zoning restrictions to build more housing.
Mo Bergman's filing an order this week, I believe, on that very issue.
Okay, because the council...
And I think someone did earlier.
The council should be supporting this. It actually does not affect Worcester as much as it would affect the surrounding towns, because they're the ones that have imposed 2-acre zoning lots to prevent...
So we'll have to see what Brad thinks of all this,
Well, to
right?
prevent housing from being built, to prevent there from being more kids in their schools that they're going to have to pay for.
No, it's to preserve a lifestyle.
Yeah, well, who needs 2 acres to preserve it?
Well, 2 acres is nice.
1 acre won't do.
If you don't have a sewer system in your town,
bring a non-Worcester, bring the suburb point of view.
But I just want to say, nobody, 2 acres, no developer is going to put up $100,000 house on 2 acres. Of
course they are.
Okay?
Oh, $100,000 house.
No. It's got to be, a $500,000 house. So we should be supporting what the governor has proposed in terms of alleviating
Go ahead, Brett.
zoning issues.
Getting back a little to so many candidates running for city council, one of the things I see is I see all these developments going up, whether it's 145 Front Street, the Edge, all the things downtown. It's great. So if you're a voter and you're driving by, you see all these great things going up. You also see your taxes going up. You know, with all these buildings and everything, you would hope that, you know, create some economic development, and your taxes, you'd get more income and your taxes would start going down. And I just see the working class just getting squeezed again. And I think that could be one of the reasons you have so many people running. Every day you drive by and you see these beautiful buildings and you think these developers are getting rich and everything's going great, and yet your tax bill keeps going up.
Well, we're going to go on. I am fascinated, though, about this neighborhood versus downtown. And I run into so many people who 2 years ago it was we don't have any density. Now it's all, you're absolutely right, now it's all about gentrification. Oh, we brought people in, oh my God, we're pushing people out. Well, I don't know, you told me 2 years ago there was nobody there to push out. But it is about gentrification that the conversation is. But I also run into so many people who talk about with these luxury apartments, oh, they say they're luxury apartments, but you wait and see who really moves in downtown. And it's like, you know, this menacing, that's not what it's going to end up being. And do we believe just quickly that downtown is not going to spin off? That some of what you were just talking about, that downtown is not going to attract some people for real, true market rate housing?
We'll find out. We'll find out. I mean, Boston continues to rise. I mean, so some of that pull into Worcester is because people can't afford.
Well, you wrote for years about the Research Bureau writing about Worcester becoming a bedroom community of Boston and the perils thereof. We're going to talk about who's going to get to vote on all this, and should you be able to vote on it when you're just 16 years old. What do you think? We'll talk about it straight ahead on Central Mass Chronicles.
Local news from Central Massachusetts for Central Massachusetts.
A car into a utility pole on Webster Street in Worcester this evening. Worcester reaches a new host agreement with its 14th recreational marijuana business.
A fire breaks out in Groton today. A rollover crash in Worcester slows down traffic on Route 20 this afternoon.
Reporters in the field. And an in-depth local forecast. Worcester News Tonight on Charter TV3.
Life is about rules. Every day you get up, you got to play by certain rules. But the student handbook says students cannot wear hats, bandanas, scarves, or sweatbands. And I agree with that rule. I am a big believer in dialogue, even if people absolutely don't agree with me. I think people calling up and saying, I don't agree with you, I don't like your position, I think that's important. And that's so lacking in this country today. It's lacking in the world today. Say well, everybody, and don't worry, just be happy.
I think it's like the Berlin Wall. No matter.
Are you that stupid? The Berlin Wall. Do you even understand what the Berlin Wall was? It was constructed to keep people from leaving. See, because socialism works so well that people wanted to get out of there. They had to build a wall around it so people wouldn't leave. You're listening to the Jim Polito Show, your safe space.
All right, so is everybody going to be able to vote when they're 16? Hey, there's two things that are going on. One, you have probably heard that Representative Ayanna Pressley here from Massachusetts is pushing this at a federal level. Let's get kids more involved. Let's get them civically engaged, 16. But State Senator Harriet Chandler is pushing this at the state level. And what she is talking about is we're bringing back civics to Massachusetts classrooms. And then it's the same sort of thing. Let's get kids involved at 16, get them to become lifelong voters. Brad, I don't know, are 18-year-olds out there voting? Well, I don't know what's going to happen when we go to 16. But her bill would have the municipality. So Boylston, Worcester, wherever could vote
Local
to
option.
lower, to vote lower to 16.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the kids are ready to vote. You know, I have a daughter, she's 15 years old, and I don't let her run my house. I get to run my house. You know, the decisions kids make are often wrong. That's why, you know, as a parent, you try to guide them to make, you know, small mistakes, but no critical mistakes. And if you allow the younger kids to vote, I think you're going to turn it into a huge popularity contest, and we'll have, you know, Kanye West and Kim Kardashian on the ballot, you know, and they'll recognize those names and go there. And you're not going to have a thoughtful conversation about policies, which is what really matters to our local government.
I think you're selling our youth. I think we have to not refer to them as kids when we talk about this, because this is an adult. We're asking to do an adult action by voting. But I am in favor of it. I think the decisions that are made by government affect the lives of these students, these children. Excuse me.
Children.
These children.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yes,
Right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And I think we would see incredible change. And that's why I say I think change is in the air. And I think this is getting 16, 17, 18-year-olds into the voting booth, I think has been demonstrated to increase lifelong voting, although that's certainly early into that. And there's issues that matter to them that are not being addressed to their satisfaction.
Informed change?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I certainly felt, I think I would have been fine voting at 16. I suspect you and you. I mean,
well, this
no.
was at
So
and in the paper they put Jason Palich. So yes, Jason
Yes.
Palich is somebody who has been involved in politics. I'm going to go out on a limb, Roberta, and say he's not your typical 16-year-old voter.
well,
who
if
would
they're
be
not
at town
interested,
meeting.
they won't vote.
Okay, well, so the civics course that's being implemented is at 8th grade. So when you're in 8th grade, you're like 12 or 13. Why not
Yeah, but
drop
stick
it
to
down?
the 16
no,
level.
Why? What's so special
Well, what's
about
the difference
16?
between 16 and
You just-
18?
What's it? Well, there might be at 18, you can go to serve in the armed forces, okay? And you know, I wasn't in favor of
can't
when it was
drink,
lowered.
right?
When it was lowered from 21 to 18, and that was just the, you know, Nixon did that to get in the, the younger voters to vote for him. They go, oh boy, we have the
I
right
think
to
if there
vote.
were 16-year-olds voting this year in the municipal election, that the campaigns that our candidates would be running would be very, very different.
Well, let me ask about
may
that.
be,
Is that
but
a good
what
thing?
is 16-year-olds really have no stake in the system. They're still living under their parents' roofs. They're being supported by their parents, and the parents still have a job to do with raising their kids. When you're 18, if you graduated from high school, you can go and live on your own, and earn your own, and you can pay taxes.
A lot of 18-year-olds that haven't graduated yet.
Well, that
Brad,
may
is
be
it a voter grab by the Democrats?
I'm not. I wouldn't say by one
that's
party or the other.
interesting.
Of course.
But I do got to say, we say on one hand that they're not old enough to make a decision on smoking cigarettes, on vaping, on stuff like that, and yet on the other hand, but they're perfectly capable of picking out their favorite person on the ballot to vote for. And I'm still of the opinion that when I was 16, I wasn't paying much attention. I might know who was running for president, but I don't know the other people at the local officers, and I certainly would have gone along with the crowd and voted just to have that sticker on me all day that said
Well,
I
let
voted.
everybody get in there at their last word, but I will just say this, they have these criminal defenses now where your brain supposedly hasn't matured until you are 25.
25,
Should
exactly.
we be going to 25
and then
instead
maybe
of
we
16?
should start not letting people over the age of 85 vote, because we know that there's a tremendous presence of dementia after that age.
Well, the people who are over 85 wouldn't be voting if the candidates' supporters didn't go into the old age homes and pull them out and would have the voting machine right down in their lobby to have them vote. How many of them are mobile enough to be able to get to the voting?
Being
booth
mobile
and
is
vote?
not a requirement for voting.
I didn't say, but you say why not
All
have
I'm
them
saying
not
is it's
vote?
arbitrary. The age is very much arbitrary as far as I can tell.
Well,
and the difference between a
then
16-year-old
why
and an
not?
18-year-old
Then why
is
not
not that great.
10-year-olds? If it's arbitrary, why
I'm
not
just going to let people
10-year-olds?
know that this conversation is going to continue. But if it does continue, for you to be able to see it, it will be when our next show comes around. Thank you all so much for joining us right here on Central Mass Chronicles.